Hey, folks, welcome to The Truth About Beer. And I'm Papa Joey, and this is my co-conspirator, Keith.
Yeah, hey, thanks for joining us. You know, tonight we're going to be cracking open a cold one, you know. cracking up too. Yeah, exactly. And also cracking open a huge topic, man. You know, this episode's all about the moon landing, you know, and the big conspiracy debate that surrounds it. You know, it's fascinating. You know, did we really land on the moon, or was it all just a big epic hoax?
Yeah, that's right. We're actually going there, folks.
We are.
Yeah, one small step for man, one giant leap for two guys that like to drink beer and talk about conspiracy theories.
Yeah, I love talking about conspiracy theories. One of my favorite things to do. You know, we're talking things like Apollo 11, NASA, astronauts, you know, tinfoil hats, which I don't have mine. Shadowy film
right.
Studios.
We weren't prepared again. We were supposed to get those ready.
Yeah, well, it's up there on the dummy, but different dummy. But hey, you know what? We're going to be doing this while enjoying some good quality booze, of course, or brews, as you might say. I like booze, but you know,
booze and brews. No, it was booze and blues.
Booze and blues. That's right. Yeah,
that was fun.
So brews, blues, booze, whatever, however you go about it. Speaking of which, what are we drinking?
Well, you know, in honor of this this topic about space, I thought we'd revive one we did a while back, and it's been a few years since we did this one, and I don't remember what the topic was when we did it, but we're talking the Elysian Space Dust IPA.
I remember this one. Because it got the big artichoke.
Yeah,
at least we thought
the big artichoke on the front.
It was an artichoke.
Yeah, I mean, this was back when we were doing it in my garage.
That's right. That's right. So it had to be a UFO episode, possibly.
Probably. Yeah. I know Tim was with us, and we enjoyed this beer.
Yeah, this was good.
And of course, we're opening with the official. Probably can't see it on there, but it does say The Truth About Beer on these bottle openers.
It does. Our very own.
Which you could have your very own for commenting in the comments about your and.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because we do our Truth About Beer and this today's and happens to be the moon landing conspiracy, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's today's and, but we want to know other ands that you would like us to talk about.
Yeah. Always looking for new ideas.
Because we like it.
New ands.
So anyway, I thought this was kind of, you know, perfect, or well, it was perfect, but it was at least on kind of topic for conspiracies and space. Kind of.
Yeah, it definitely works.
You know, I guess we could have grabbed some Blue Moon just for the namesake. I like Blue Moon too. So.
Oh, we could drink it later.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it depends on where we fall at the end of this this topic. If we start leaning more towards the conspiracy theorists, or the what was the word I like better?
Hoax.
Well, it's a hoax. Yes. I mean, if it turned out to be a hoax. Yeah. Skeptic. That's the word I was looking for.
Skeptic. Okay.
If we turn out to be more skeptical at the end, then I would feel a little blue and
to drink the Blue Moon.
Do the Blue Moon. So.
Well, you know, whatever we decide on, you know, a good craft beer with a space theme works for me, you know. So oh well, so now that we have our beers in hand, you know, I think we're ready to dive in. Should we try this?
Yeah, should we pour them or
well, we're sitting at a bar, so should we just drink out of the bottle like real men?
We'll try it. We're men. Okay.
Manly men.
Warning. Viewer listener discretion is advised. The majority of the content of this program is not factual. It is highly advised that it not be used for teaching your children from said content, other than making an example out of the hosts of what they should not grow up to be. Remember this, it's the beer talking.
Welcome to the truth about beer.
All the crap that we're interested in.
Searching
for the truth. Exploring the unexplained. Investigating the paranormal. Subscribe now.
Hit the alert
Hit
button.
the alert button so you don't miss an episode.
Ow!
Welcome to the truth
about beer.
and I asked for a glass from the bartender and she brought it to me.
So we should use it.
So I think I'm using because I remember hearing from the guru of the suds that you really don't get the full flavor of an IPA out of a bottle because half of the experience is being able to smell it. And since the bottle doesn't have a very big opening,
and I got a big nose, so
if you put it in a glass, it should complete the experience.
Plus, it just looks better in a glass, I think, right? Looks better in our Truth About Beer glasses.
It does. These are awesome glasses.
Yes, they are.
We'll try that again.
Cheers.
All right.
Well, you do get the smell. Definitely.
And so it adds to the flavor, right?
I don't want to block your face in the camera there. You know?
Oh, got a watery spot here.
I know it happens. It's
All right.
sweaty. It's a sweaty bottle. All right, so let's get into this, shall we?
Let's do it.
So let's set the stage. You know, it's been over half a century since Armstrong and Aldrin, took that giant leap for mankind way back in 1969. I say way back. way back. And just to be clear, I wasn't actually around to watch Apollo 11. I might look old, but I don't think I'm that old yet. But hey, I'm not. Never mind.
Sure.
Anyways, so I grew up hearing about it, and I've seen the footage, of Armstrong stepping onto the lunar soil there, and just being in awe, like how the hell do we do this? Kind of cool growing up. I mean, I think I watched it in school probably a few times. I'm sure. So,
well, now I'm depressed. No. I mean, I not only look old, I am.
You're not that old.
Well, I was 11 years old when,
in
1969, when the Apollo touched down. And, for me, it was a pretty big deal. It still is. I got to watch it with my family. We all sat around the old black and white TV and, just were glued to the tube because it was really something. I remember going out and looking at the moon, just after that, going outside and going, wow, we got people up there.
Yeah.
I mean, this is weird,
Yeah.
And so for me, the astronauts weren't just everyday astronauts to me. They were heroes.
I could see that. Yeah.
I mean, back in the day with that, it was like, we didn't play cowboys and Indians. We ran around with acting like we were space explorers and using our phasers on stun because we didn't want to kill anybody. We just wanted to, let them know who was boss.
Right.
But yeah, I was. I would totally be bummed if it really did turn out to be a hoax. But and I have seen some of the evidence, or we'll say evidence that the naysayers put out there, and some of it makes you go, So, did we really go? And I'll tell you what, if we didn't, it's not an easy thing when your childhood heroes are on the line.
Right. No, hey, I get it. It especially for you, it's a personal thing, right? Yeah.
It really is. I mean, I'm going to show you some stuff right now. I mean, this was some really old stuff, but this is how important it was to me back then.
Holy cow.
So I picked up this book as a child, an 11-year-old, and you can see it, it got a lot of views.
A little bit of wear and tear there. Yeah.
Yeah. I could have chose something other than masking tape to try to put it back together back in the day. And this masking tape is like really brittle, but yeah, it's got the whole moon thing in there. I mean, from,
that's fascinating.
It's a cool book. And so we'll be going through a lot of this evidence tonight. And not only that.
Oh, look at that. You got a whole book of tricks there, huh?
I'm getting to the good stuff. All the news articles.
That is freaking cool. That is very
I got
cool.
pages and pages of it, all cut out and separated. So it's fun.
That is very cool.
Maybe we can go through and photograph them so we can show them. But
yeah, throw them up there.
This is how serious I was at that time about space. The Enterprise in chalk.
That's cool.
Yeah,
that's a very good.
Lost in Space, the flying saucer. I drew one of those.
Not bad for 11. I couldn't draw a stick figure back then.
And I wonder what I was thinking when I did this picture. Was I going to leaning into the ecological thing? When the earth looks like a garbage can. That's a topic that we just covered last week.
Was that foreshadowing? Come on now. Did you have a glimpse into the future?
I must have. 11 years old.
That's interesting.
I know I got some. Okay. Give us fresh air. Give us death. Yeah, I tell you, I was really on one at 11.
You really were. Look at that.
The Twins. That was a band. Let's see. A witch. Oh, here we go. This is what I was looking for. Picture I drew of the Saturn V.
You were a pretty good artist, huh?
I enjoyed it. I did a lot. That one didn't turn out so good.
That one's good, though. That one came out really good.
Yeah. I was really big into Mad Magazine back then.
Oh, okay.
Too.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to draw some of those kind of characters and stuff. But yeah, no, so this, it is personal.
Yeah, very much so.
Because it was really a big part of my childhood, just digging on the astronauts and what they did and, dreaming someday to become an astronaut myself. Spoiler alert. I didn't.
We're now doing a podcast.
Yeah. But, really, had the moon landing not taken place and this whole thing with space and, of course, Star Trek and all that, it really kind of inspired this program, didn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I would say.
Yeah. So, so as we enjoy some fine brewski here, we're going to try to lay it all out to you in a way that will still be fun, and we'll try to do our trade tongue-in-cheek banter along the way. And since it is a 8 point something, I said, who knows? We might get a little tipsy.
We might get a little tipsy during this. It could be. It could happen. So, hey, if you're at home, crack open a cold one and join us for this ride into our conspiracies, ancient aliens, and our paranormal stuff.
Yeah.
This topic kind of fits, I guess, in between all of them, right? If you think about it. So definitely going to take some thought here. I think it's going to be very thought provoking.
Hopefully we present it that way.
Yeah, it should be. And, speaking of thoughts, we want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Let us know as we go through this. This is we consider this our safe space. All opinions are welcome here. Whether you're a true believer or you just think it's all a big hoax, as we said earlier. We'll try to keep it respectful and open-minded. After all, you and I, after reviewing the evidence and watching some videos, I would say maybe we're really on the fence about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I want to lean more towards they were real when it actually did happen, because let's be real.
And thank goodness it's a barbed wire fence. It's not very comfortable to sit on. So.
Right.
But nonetheless,
yeah.
So, but this is how we're going to do it tonight. So, or today, whatever time it is you're watching this. Of course, if you're watching this on the premiere, then it will be nighttime.
Yep.
So first we're going to start with evidence against the moon landings being real. So basically the case that conspiracy theorists make the landings being faked. So we'll list out and chat about the classic arguments such as photos and videos and radiation and all that juicy stuff. So then we'll switch gears to the evidence for the moon landings, the rebuttals, the hard proof, and the reasons why the scientific community, see, when I said, did I say partner in crime?
You did.
Yeah. Well, my crime is that I just totally bastardize the whole English language and kill it. So
I was going to say, blame it on the 8-pointer, but
yeah, I mean, we haven't had it open long enough for that to take place. But anyway, we're the reasons the scientific community says, yep, we did really go. So,
yeah.
And we'll wrap it up and see what you guys think.
Yeah.
After that. So
I think that sounds like a plan. I think that works good. So, as we do this deep dive, we'll throw in some visuals, even some graphics, that you guys can formulate your own opinions, So if you're watching on our video, look out for some B-roll of, some of the NASA archives and stuff like that, maybe a timeline or two. And if you're just listening, don't worry. We'll kind of go through, we'll describe, what we're saying. We might put up a timeline or something and we'll kind of talk about it. Maybe, talk about some major events that coincided, with the moon landing, maybe like Vietnam, 1970 scandals, just I can say scandals this time and it's actually right. Not like that, not like that last episode.
But the 1970 sandals were really popular, weren't they? I mean, I'm thinking of Woodstock. A lot of people were wearing sandals, weren't they?
Yeah, that's true. That's a great point.
You'd have to watch the outtakes.
The other episode. Yeah. And I'm sure at some point we're going to say, roll that footage of the moon landing, because what's a moon landing episode without you actually watching the moon landing?
Yeah,
at least a video of it, So, all right, so let's dive down this rabbit hole and grab your drink and hang on for a wild ride.
All right,
let's do it. Oh, cheers again.
Well, cheers again.
Hey, sorry to interrupt the show, folks, but Joey, have you ever tried Project Wise skincare products?
I have, man, and it's really something else. I mean, they've got two standout products. They have this wonderful anti-aging cream and a tripeptide eye serum. Both built for guys who want results without the hassles.
Yeah, the anti-aging cream is legit. Seriously, it smooths fine lines, firms up tired skin, and leaves that natural glow, without looking greasy or shiny, But it feels simple, but it's effective.
Yeah, and don't overlook the eye serum. I mean, it's packed with 3 powerful peptides. They tighten, firm, and reduce wrinkles around the eyes, leaving you looking sharp and energized.
Well, the best part is while you're investing in your own self-care, Project Y gives back, supporting women's causes like breast cancer research, domestic abuse advocacy, and access to education.
So what you're saying is when you use their skincare, you're not just taking care of yourself.
Right.
you're part of something even bigger.
Yes, Project Y, men's skincare with substance. So for a limited time only, use promo code ProjectY20 for 20% off their skincare.
Yeah, just visit www.projectynow.com.
Get yourself that 20% off.
Good stuff. All right, Keith, let's put on our tinfoil hats and just for a moment and play devil's advocate. So what are the main pieces of evidence people cite to claim the moon landings were faked? Time to channel our conspiracy theorist side and shell out the case against the Apollo program.
So, ladies and gentlemen, they lied to us.
No.
Okay. So, first off, a lot of hoax claims revolve around photographs and video footage from the Apollo missions, right? So, conspiracy theorists have poured over all the images, probably with a microscope. I'm sure, probably literally with microscopes, looking for anything weird. You know, one of the major arguments, which I find fascinating too, was the fact that the American flag appears to flap or ripple on the moon, right? Even though there's no atmosphere and thus having no wind on the moon. But if you look at that iconic image of the Apollo 11 astronaut saluting the flag cloth is wrinkled and it looks like it's waving potentially. But, you know, we saw some of the footages and, you know, we kind of go one way or another on that. But the hoax proponents say there must have been a breeze on the film set, right? Because on the real moon, the flag should just hang limp. And they often claim that, you know, some poor stagehand just let the fan out or something, which is so pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, I seen that, you know, as a kid, and thank goodness I was a kid because that was like, yeah, that's just normal stuff. You know, I didn't think about the moon not having any atmosphere that would cause that, you know, so I didn't really question it then. Right. I mean, it's, of course, now as an adult, and, you know, I say, okay, well, there's got to be something to the reasons why that was blowing in the wind out there. And so, you know, they really did spin their theories on that image.
Yeah, they certainly did. You know, and really the next big one that they talk about is no stars in the sky, right? In any of the photos. So which is interesting. In all the photos are just that you see, the sky is just pitch black behind them, right? And of course the moon is very brightly lit from the sun. But you know, deniers argue that if they were really on the moon, which has no clouds and no light pollution, technically per se, right? The sky should have been full of stars, you know, bright as day. You should be able to see them. They suspect NASA didn't bother to paint stars on the fake backdrop, or adding a realistic star field would be too hard to do consistently. So they just made it black. And, you know, to them, missing stars are a smoking gun. I say those, the naysayers.
The Sagittarius is backwards. How'd that? How did they do that? So, yeah, really, I mean, you know, space has billions of stars. I get out and walk the dog at 5 o'clock in the morning, and now I'm starting to see more stars in the morning. You know, where the heck are they in the photos? I mean, man, NASA must have really screwed up that design.
Very much so.
Because it's one of those arguments that sound convincing. Then we have the shadows and lighting issues in the moon photos. So the claim is that shadows cast by the astronauts and objects sometimes aren't parallel, you know, or sometimes objects in shadow areas. I told you I just totally destroy the English language. You know, they're oddly well lit, so that should be a shadowy area, but it's got a lot of light. So anyway, that's they look at that as being one of the things that say that it's been staged, and they say the sun is the only light source on the moon, so all shadows should be the same direction, and anything in shadow should be basically black. But in some Apollo images, you can see details in the shadow areas or shadows of rocks in the lunar module go at slightly a different angle from each other. So people cry, "Oh, it's studio lighting." In fact, I mean, I'm looking at our shadows in here from our studio lighting, and they go all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So
they truly do.
So anyway, the view is NASA essentially had a Hollywood lighting crew illuminate the set. So individually creating telltale shadows, discrepancies that a single distant sun wouldn't produce.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, they often bring up the specific photo where Buzz Aldrin is climbing down from the lunar module ladder and he's full shadow, yet you can see him clearly, right? Yeah. They say that there should have been a dark silhouette if the sun is the only light source, technically. So they suspect fill lights or reflectors were on set. Conspiracists basically picture the moon landing being filmed like a movie scene directed by, Stanley Kubrick or somebody. We'll talk about that theory in a bit too. It always gets interesting. So then another claim is the lack of a blast crater. So the idea is when the lunar module touched down, if the engines, the thrusters were firing, it would have created, some type of a huge crater, right? Or at least, scattered the moon dust away from the landing site. But photos of the footpads show them on the surface with no obvious crater blast. They also point out that the landing foot pads, I'm like, I'm going to butcher it now.
It's contagious. Watch
contagious. Are remarkably clean. Shouldn't they be covered in dust if it all got kicked up from the landing?
Think so.
Yeah. So the conspiracy logic, if it were a fake set, NASA might not have known that the dust would blow around. So the stage ended up looking too clean.
Well, that is a curious thing. I mean, as a comparison, I used to live by an old Air Force base.
Okay.
Not too old. Actually, my mother-in-law worked there. She was one of the last ones on the base when they closed it. Now it's a regional. Well, no, it's a national airport, right? What'd you call it? Mesa Gateway?
Yeah, it is. It is now, yeah.
Yeah. It used to be Williams Field.
Yep.
Anyway, when I was living over there, I would see the Harriers come in and, and they have that downward thrust when they're landing. And, they blow up a hell of a lot of dust, when they're coming in. So you'd think the lunar module would kind of do the same thing. So I think the absence of a blast crater is a little suspicious.
Could be.
And how about the footprints on the moon's surface? They're surprisingly, that's not an easy word for me to say. I'm surprised how well defined, like the famous photo of Aldrin's footprint or boot print. He was wearing boots.
Yeah.
in the lunar soil. I mean, they say the moon is bone dry. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no moisture. So how did the powdery soil hold a crisp footprint impression? Curious.
Good question.
On Earth, wet sand or soil holds shape, but dry powder normally doesn't. I've never really tried to step in a pile of baby powder, but
it could be a good experiment.
It could be. Mm-hmm. So maybe the moon set had damp sand or special effects to get the footprints shot.
Yeah, maybe. But you know what? There's more.
No.
Yeah, there's a lot more. How about the idea that NASA didn't have the technology to actually make the moon trip in 1969, right? They often claim that, the computers and engineering of the 60s were just too primitive. I hear arguments like Apollo guidance computer was less powerful than a modern calculator or a smartwatch. Yeah, exactly. So how could they navigate 240,000 miles to the moon and back with that technology, right? They point out the entire computing power in the Apollo 11 was laughably small by today's standards. So like 64 kilobytes of memory and CPU running at only a few megahertz. Today we're up in the 30 megahertz range, 50 megahertz range, So, the skepticism comes with the doubt that with such Stone Age technology that we can pull off something like that, let alone live broadcast it back to Earth, right? And the complexity and the risk of the mission to fake it would be a lot easier than actually trying to do the actual mission itself. In fact, Bill Kaysen, the guy who literally wrote the book on the moon hoax, titled "We Never Went to the Moon in 1976," claimed that NASA had only a 0.0017% chance of success of landing men on the moon and returning them back home alive. So essentially zero. So from that viewpoint, of course, it must have been a fake, because success would have been impossible, they say.
And Kaysen wasn't just a guy or any guy. He was a guy, but he wasn't just any guy. He had actually worked as a technical writer for Rocketdyne in the 1950s. See, they built rocket engines. So he wasn't an engineer, but he was around rockets, and later decided it was just a $30 billion swindle, hence the subtitle of his book, which his book was called "We Didn't Land on the Moon."
We didn't land on the moon. We didn't actually land on the moon.
Yeah. He basically kicked off the modern moon hoax movement in the 70s. He alleged NASA could much more easily fake a moon landing than do it for real. And that tells you the mindset. So technology hurdles seemed insurmountable to him. And indeed, on the tech front, conspiracists mentioned the Van Allen radiation belt around the Earth. This is a big one for me, and it's kind of hard to dismiss. These are the zones of high energy radiation that a spacecraft would have to pass through to reach the moon. They argue the Apollo astronauts would be fried by radiation or solar flares outside of Earth's protective magnetic field. They doubt the thin aluminum hull of the spacecraft and a brief transit time were enough protection. Some say NASA could solve the radiation problem, or couldn't. They could not solve the radiation problem, so they just sent astronauts to low Earth orbit and fake the rest. So this ties into the claim you mentioned that NASA lacked the technical expertise in general. Have you seen pictures? I'm sure we're going to show them here, but the Van Allen radiation belt.
I have seen it.
It looks like the Earth is in the middle of a donut.
yeah, it does. Well, they really do like to pile on the doubts, don't they? I've heard things like, how do the astronauts survive the extreme temperatures of the moon? Hot in the sun, cold in the shade, with just the suits that they had on, or radio communications and live TV broadcasts to the moon 238,000 miles away in 1969, right? That's kind of crazy to think we had that technology. But, it must have been done on a set on Earth with local signals, they say. So essentially, doubters underestimate the technology at the time or assume any unknown or risky aspect, it had to be faked. That's their stance on it. So, the idea of the grand conspiracy requiring everybody to keep quiet, that was kind of big back in that time, right? You had the CIA, the FBI, there was a lot of that going on. Watergate. Anyway, funnily, I like that word. Funnily, I like that word. Conspiracists usually don't find this part hard to believe. They think thousands of NASA employees could be fooled or Let me have another beer, shall I? Compartmentalized. I can say that. That's a word I could say. With only a select few knowing the truth, or that astronauts and insiders were bribed or threatened to silence. It's not new, right, to our culture. It's happened before. Bill Casings and others insinuated that NASA could pay off people with a massive Apollo budget. It was something like 80 billion or something like that, or 80 million. It was a pretty good sized budget, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, it was huge for the time.
Yeah, exactly. They even spin tragic events as part of the cover-up. For example, the Apollo 1 fire in 1967, that killed 3 astronauts during the ground test. Hoaxes like Casing darkly suggest that it was staged or even deliberate to silence astronauts who might spill the beans. It's pretty heavy shit, man. You know, accusing NASA of murder in a sense, right?
Yeah, so for a company party, everybody that was involved in the NASA Apollo program, they were all invited to this island. If you know where I'm going. It was a special island.
A special island, yeah, that's for sure.
And help them to stay quiet. Because what happens on the island stays on the island unless you open your mouth. And, that's a deeply disturbing claim. Yeah, it would be a good conspiracy theory if it could be proven. I don't think Epstein was he was younger than me.
He was a lot younger. Yeah.
So I was only 11. So, but there's zero evidence for that. So,
right.
So why go there? Okay. With every NASA tragedy, it becomes further proof that the narrative suggests something sinister is afoot. So, what about the multiple moon landings? And we often talk about Apollo 11, but remember NASA sent 6 missions that landed astronauts on the moon. So we had Apollos 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17. And those were all between 69 and 72. And there's a reason I missed 13. There's a movie about it. You can watch it. Yeah. So conspiracists have 2 ways to tackle that. Some say all of them were fake, not just the Apollo 11, Practice makes perfect. Others concede that maybe some later ones could be real, but the first one was definitely fake, to win the space race and then to cover up and then cover it up. So we won the space race and then we covered it up, is what they say. However, the prevalent hoax narrative is that all crewed moon landings were staged and no human has ever walked on the moon. That means a dozen Apollo astronauts who say they did are lying, and hundreds of thousands of people all went to an island to be silenced. No. Okay. Thousands of people who worked on the Apollo were essentially duped, or they're lying too. So it's a massive conspiracy theory. Say one poll a few years back found around 5 to 6% of Americans, and that's pretty low, believe the moon landings were a hoax. But then since the internet, other surveys over the decades have reported anywhere from 6 to up to 20%.
Wow.
So it's pretty significant of Americans harbor doubt, as well as even a higher number abroad. For example, up to 25% of the Britons and 28% Russian. In some surveys thought the landings were faked. Something just flew into my eye. What was it? So, it's not super fringe anymore. It's surprisingly common. So what do you think?
Well, speaking of Russians, interestingly, I've noticed conspiracists often ask, why haven't the Russians or the Chinese sent people to the moon? Maybe it's because it can't be done. They also argue that the Soviets, being America's rival, would have exposed the hoax if it was fake. But those hardcore hoax believers have an answer for that too. So they claim that the USSR was in on the scam. They were actually part of it, right? Perhaps bribed or promised something to stay quiet. Others, like one prominent conspiracy theorist named Bart Sibrel, I think that's how you say his last name, Sibrel. Yeah.
Looks right.
Wrongly claimed that the Soviets couldn't track deep space missions until 1972. So supposedly they wouldn't have known Apollo was fake until it was all over. But, that's actually false. So Soviets were fully capable of tracking the Apollo spacecraft and did so. But within the conspiracy mindset, fast can get twisted. And we'll talk about the Soviet part of it later. And there are a few, I guess you would say, weirder claims that tend to pop up from time to time. So just so we make sure we cover everything here.
Yeah.
So
Just because of the multiple moon landings.
yeah, exactly. So that some say that the same backdrops or moon landscapes were reused in the different Apollo mission photos. God, this beer's getting to me already. I can't even talk. But so they'll put the photos side by side and they'll say, see these hills? They here in Apollo 15, but not do the other ones, right? They'll try to prove their theory, but they're often mistaken the terrains that just look similar. It's our first time being on the moon, right? We don't know with identifying features incorrectly. But I mean, look at the Mars photos, right? You see a lot of that terrain when it comes back. It all looks the same.
Yeah.
It kind of looks like,
true.
I thought I saw the superstitions in the background once. I'm just kidding. And there's also the famous Sea Rock photo, which I didn't even know about it until I did the research for this show.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I never realized that. But so it's an image from Apollo 16. It's a small rock on the ground that looks like the letter C, as if it were a prop that was labeled, right? So conspiracists say that they left the prop rock labeled C on the set by accident. The likely explanation was it was either a printing defect or hair on the film during copying. Later copies of the photo don't show the C, but the one idea is out there that you can't unsee it. So it became lore in the whole moon hoax conspiracy, whatever you call it.
Well, that was definitely an attention getter,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't see that every day on a moon rock.
No.
So, and they call it the prop rock, huh?
Yeah, the prop rock.
That sounds pretty silly, but but if you're predisposed, good beer, dude. Okay, to distrust. I mean, they can feel like, gotcha.
Yep.
So another, people point out that astronauts' behaviors in post-mission interviews, especially the Apollo 11, their press conference in '69, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, they appeared somewhat tense and even gloomy, rather than exuberant heroes. So if you've watched them like I have, they are looking very uncomfortable and like, I don't really want to be here and I don't want to answer that question. It's kind of how it looks to me, but like they're hiding a secret. So the analysts say that, Armstrong, he was a little introverted though. So it could explain some of that. He didn't really like the public life. And so, you can see weird stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, how about we go down this rabbit hole, right? So some even try to bring in aliens or ancient astronauts into the mix, which is always fascinating to us.
Yeah.
I love that conversation when we have
That's good.
But while not the mainstream hoax theory, there's an idea that maybe NASA did go to the moon and encountered some aliens and brought back some evidence of extraterrestrial life out there, and then just fake some footage to hide the fact,
I love this theory.
Yeah, I think it's a good theory too. Or that's the reason we haven't officially returned since Apollo 17 is the aliens told us not to come back. And see ya, get out of here. We don't want you coming back. This is where the moon hoax lore and UFO lore sometimes blend, but for our audience, this is perfect. They love the ancient astronaut theories. So those tangents are very interesting. We've heard claims of, weird structures on the other side of the moon. They call that the dark side of the moon, right? Isn't that what that is?
Or the far side.
The far side of the moon, yeah. Strange transmissions. Santa Claus was NASA's code for UFOs, some suggest. Santa Claus coming.
I did hear that.
You did hear that?
Yeah,
or you didn't know?
No,
yeah,
I did. Yeah.
If you've heard of the supposed Apollo 20 mission, where they found
the secret mission.
Yeah, the secret mission where they found the alien city. It's they say it's pure internet urban legend, but I don't know. I tend to lean a different way on that, possibly. Because
we're talking government here.
I know. But the whole idea of the hoax is that NASA never really put men on the moon at all. And the Apollo footage was staged right here on Earth in a studio. Whether it was to hide aliens or just win the space race, it's really going to depend on who you ask.
Yeah. The more conspiracies can spin into sci-fi territory, the more they pull me in. Yeah. But let's stick to the fundamental claim. Okay. That the moon landings were a hoax perpetrated that were
perpetrated.
That's the word, by NASA. I was trying to think of a Joey word to put there because I hate 3-syllable words. They really piss me off. But anyway, perpetrated by NASA, possibly with the help from Hollywood filmmakers or Cold War intelligence agencies.
Ooh.
A favorite theory is that Stanley Kubrick, which we talked about him a little bit earlier, the brilliant director of 2001, A Space Odyssey, which first, it came out in 1968, so a year before the moon landing.
Interesting.
Anyway, said that they hired him to film the fake moon landing footage. The idea is that Kubrick's film was so visually convincing about space, and then, it's been a while since I watched it, but I remember last time I did, I thought, this really is pretty good for its time, because it looked like space, and really it looked like a real space station in space.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty cool. That's the guy you'd want to make your movie. So some versions say it was done on a soundstage in Hollywood. Others say maybe in a secret base in the desert. I remember even hearing of a large Air Force hangar being used to build the set in. Say the Flat Earth Society, of all groups, claimed that in 1980, the landings were staged with the help of Walt Disney's sponsorship.
Oh, look at that.
So a script by Arthur C. Clarke, who was a sci-fi writer, who he was the co-creator of 2001, A Space Odyssey. Then, of course, it was directed by Kubrick. Quite the creative team, don't you think?
Very much so. Yeah.
So it sounds like a wild theory, but surprisingly popular in conspiracy circles. There was even a mockumentary claiming Kubrick confessed via hidden messages in his later film, The Shining. Of course, Kubrick's family has denied this absurdity, but the image of Kubrick secretly working for NASA is now legend.
So basically, the conspiracists, imagine at NASA, possibly with CIA help, fabricated every aspect. The rocket launches were real. They launched empty Saturn V's, maybe, but the astronauts either orbited low Earth or were on set the entire time. So TV broadcasts were pre-filmed, done on a soundstage. The moon rocks are alleged to be fake or from Antarctica, of all places. And everyone was sworn to secrecy or on a need-to-know basis. They often say it was done to fulfill President Kennedy's goal, of landing a man on the moon, without risking a humiliating failure. And, we had to one-up the Soviets, right? We had to beat them, and we had to do that at all costs. And so NASA had plenty of motive, right? They had money. They could hire Hollywood to do it. They had all the key players in place. And that's really the conspiracy in a nutshell, to kind of wrap that all up. But, let's not forget motive, though. Conspiracy theorists love to discuss why NASA would fake it. When mentioned a couple beating the Soviets and justifying that enormous budget. So it was $30 billion in 1970. That's a lot of money back in the 1970s, right? Yeah. Possibly distracting the public from issues like the Vietnam War. There's an argument that the moon landings drew attention away from Vietnam in the late 60s. So, in fact, they note Apollo missions abruptly stopped around the time that the U.S. had wound down Vietnam, which is very interesting to me, implying that perhaps it served as PR purpose. which we kind of see that in today's media, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Take your attention off this, put it on something else. Yeah. Also, by faking the success of the missions, NASA secures a continued fundage and the prestige of, us being the first ones to set foot on the moon. That's a lot of motive to me,
yeah.
right?
I mean, so if it was possible to go, then faking it was the only way to really beat the Soviets without losing face.
Mm-hmm.
Casey even argued that NASA could pay off a lot of people with $30 billion to maintain the secret. And I'm just going to add that another reason I think they could have stopped doing it, because I remember now, as a kid, I can't say how old I was because I don't know when the last Apollo mission was. I don't remember the year, but it was like old hat at that point. Yeah, someone else back on the moon. Big deal.
Yeah.
It was old news. So, that could have been the reason they quit. So, well, people have kind of lost interest in this whole thing, and it's costing us a lot of money, and plus the aliens up there don't want us to come back. So, but anyway, I mean, I think we've outlined the major conspiracy claims. Yeah. I mean, questionable photos. We got the flag. No stars, shadows, etc. Technical impossibilities, the radiation, computing power, missing evidence, no crater from blast, suspicious behavior, and assumed motives for fraud. So, did we miss anything?
I think that pretty much.
Yeah, probably. I mean, while we're researching the topic, I've seen new claims of other things, though, that might put the Apollo mission in question. Things like, and this was from, of course, I didn't hear it from Elon himself, but they said it came from Elon Musk, that it would take multiple rockets for refueling to get us to the moon. And then how did the batteries, which are really no different than the batteries we use in our cars, last so long to run air conditioners and whatnot on the lunar module while the astronauts were out doing their thing. So there's those questions, but I don't know, and I know we don't have rebuttals for those at this time, but we have theories. We're full of theories. So folks, if you have more questions, I would suggest you do something, some deeper digging yourself. But for the context of this episode, I think we'll move on to the other side now.
Yeah, I like that idea. But
you're going to put the brakes on, aren't you?
I am. I'm going to put the brakes on this. Maybe one more. Let's throw this one out there just to make sure we're covering all our bases. So the claim that because no other country has sent humans beyond low Earth orbit since Apollo, maybe it was all a lie. Like, if we really did in 69, why haven't we done it again since 72? So 72.
Oh, 72.
So yeah, that answers your question.
That does.
Why, especially now being 2025, why can't we go back? We did it back in the 69. We should definitely be able to do it now. I mean, did we lose that technology? To the point of how even NASA folks have said that, the Saturn V rocket tech was essentially retired and we had to rebuild it from scratch. But conspiracists interpret it as we never had it to begin with. So the argument overlooks a lot of political and funding issues, but resonates with some of the conspiracy theorists. So I think we've gathered enough evidence against, right, as a conspiracy world sees it. And it's a lot. It's a lot to make you go,
for sure.
And when you throw it all together like this, it's pretty easy to see how somebody can be overwhelmed and start doubting the moon landings. So we just hit everybody with a ton of doubting evidence of the moon landings, right? But don't worry. Now we get to be skeptical.
That's what we do best.
Yeah. And we'll see if these are really unexplainable or if they have a logical explanation to them. So, spoiler alert, NASA and scientists have pretty much answered all these questions pretty thoroughly.
truth about beer.